Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Suspenders Unbuttoned Podcast. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Julie, and we're excited to welcome Anthony Pesare to our podcast. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation. I'm really
Yeah,
looking forward to this.
perfect. Well, we're happy to have you here, and we can't wait to learn about your books and your journey to writing them.
Okay.
So tell us about your first book was called They Always Win, and then you just recently published Back in the Game, and
Correct.
it's a series. So tell us a little bit about that, the books.
Okay, so when I was on the Rhode Island State Police, I was in the intelligence unit, and we were tasked with investigating organized crime. And what happened was we had 3 witnesses in protective custody, so we were using them to testify against the mob. And so we were with them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then as a result of making cases against the crime family, we got convictions. And so when that was done, that part of my career, I said, there's a book here as a story to tell, but I wasn't going to do true fiction because I'm lazy and I'm not going to go through transcripts and all that stuff with footnotes. So what I did was I thought you always want to tell your story, right? That's what books are all about, television shows. Well, my story was growing up in an Italian-American neighborhood that every day I saw wise guys, as we called them back then. They would be hanging on the corners, they'd have the fancy cars, they'd have all the money, and sometimes you kind of get sucked into that world. And so what I talked about in the first book was how I was exposed to that life, and that my parents wouldn't allow me to do that. I remember one time, I was just a young kid, I had a bike, and one of the guys that hung on the corner said, "Hey, would you take this package up to Pete's Bar and just drop it off?" So I go, he gives me $10, which was like unbelievable for a young kid. So I did it a couple of times, and I was buying baseball cards, of all things, the baseball cards with the gum. And so my mother looks at me one day, she goes, "Where are you getting the money for these, to buy these cards?" And I said, "Well, Ernie Grilly, he gives me $10. She said, "Do you know what you're bringing up there?" I said, "No, it's just a package." Well, she knew what it was. It was gambling slips. So his cousin lived downstairs from us. We lived in a 3-tenement house. And my mother hears him come to visit his cousin. And she went downstairs like a mama bear. Whoom! And she told him, "Don't you have my son do anything like that ever again." So that was my short but illustrious career as a mobster. It didn't last long.
Yeah, it's funny. Growing up, I would hear stories like that too. My uncle has a story. He used to work at the coffee shop on the street, and so he knew everybody. He'd shine their shoes. He had no idea.
Right.
My grandmother too. She had no idea until she was an adult and read about it in the paper, and she's like, "I know them."
Yeah. Well,
I grew up with them.
growing up in that neighborhood, that was a way of life.
Yeah.
You have to understand a little bit of the history of Italy, where Southern Italians were looked down upon by Northern Italians. So most of the migration here to our country were people from Southern Italy. And people from Southern Italy relied on men of respect, they called them. These were the people you went to if you needed a job, or if you wanted a dispute, if you had a problem with your landlord. The bottom line is these men of respect turned into mobsters. But that's that culture, and if you grow up in it, you understand, It was a fascinating way to grow up. But I wanted to be a state trooper all my life, most of my life. And so once I became a state trooper, I had a great career, and that's what led me to write the first book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I'm going to say, I also bought baseball cards, but I had a paper route. And it was so boring.
Yeah, no, I had one too. I had 105 papers. I'll remember it because you had to pick them up every afternoon, rain, snowstorms, and you would just, with your little cart, And I think I end up making like $2.50 at the end of the week. So I know what that's like.
We were the drop-off spot, so they
Oh,
got dumped every day at my house. But then I had to sort them and get everybody's ready, or whatever it was. But so your books, these are fun because it's like real events, like kind of mixed in with your books. So your books are inspired by real events. How do you balance the your facts and fiction when you're writing?
Well, what I use is the actual events as sort of the theme, and I follow that theme, that story. But it allows me to talk about, Sundays, every Sunday going to the beach with my family. Yeah. It allows me to talk about the conflict that Gino, the character, faces, even in the state police, where he's Italian, and there weren't many Italians in the late 70s on the state police. So he battles with that, and along the way, there's a love story where he falls in love with one of his co-workers, and that causes friction within the department and also with his mother, Teresa, who loves her son, loves him to death, but she wants him to marry the perfect woman, and of course the perfect woman has to be Italian. So,
obviously, yes.
So I think to answer your question, the true facts were sort of an outline. And then as I started writing, the way I write is I write it out on a legal pad, and then I type it. And sometimes I'll be writing, and all of a sudden I'll think of something that happened in my life, and then I turn it into that piece of fiction.
So you talk about Gino and how the books center around Gino, and that this is, based on lots of things that actually happened to you. So how much of Gino himself, like how much of yourself did you put into Gino other than just circumstances?
I'd say 70% of Gino is me and 30% is fiction, especially in the first book, Okay. The second book was a little more of a stretch with more fiction. But it was me. I talk about growing up, as I said, in an Italian neighborhood. I talk about going through the training academy for the state police, which was incredibly difficult. And the only thing that separated the people that made it through the academy that didn't is you really had to want that job. You had to really want it. Yeah. And then you become part of this brotherhood and sisterhood. And some of my best friends were still people I went through the academy with. So, it's just, I've had a really extraordinary life. I've been blessed in many ways. And, when people talk about something they've accomplished in law enforcement, I always say, no one does anything alone in law enforcement. It's always team. It's always a lot of talented people. And I was lucky to learn from some of the best investigators ever. And, so I've always had law enforcement in my life. And actually, so when I finished being on the state police for 24 years, so they had a mandatory retirement. So you have to leave after 25. So at 24 years, I was offered a job at Roger Williams University. Yeah. I ran the criminal justice program. I continue to research and talk about organized crime. But after about 6 years, I really wanted to get back into law enforcement because academia is a different culture, much different than the culture I came from. And it wasn't so much that culture is wrong and mine's right, but I just never felt comfortable in my skin as an academic. So I had an opportunity. There was an opening in the Middletown Police Department. Middletown's on Aquidneck Island, as you know, just a little bit north of Newport.
Yeah.
Yes, Julie, you got to come down to Newport someday. We'll show you the mansions. We got everything down here: beaches, mansions.
Yeah,
that's where all the cool.
That area is beautiful.
Where all the cool people are.
So I did that job for 14 years. I retired again, and then I started practicing law and prosecuting cases. And then the police department asked me to come back and be chief again. So I did that for 2 years and retired again. And my daughters say all the time, "Dad, enough, please."
Retire. How many times are you going to retire?
Yeah, exactly. You really have to decide what you want to do when you grow up, Dad.
Isn't it great though that you have found all these new ways to kind of share your skills and your knowledge and
Well,
yeah, your life.
yeah,
Right.
I think part of life is reinventing yourself at certain parts of
Mm-hmm.
your life. And so you hear some really sad stories about people who leave law enforcement and they have nothing else in their lives, you know. So I try to get involved in other things, and I did some acting for a while. I enjoyed that. I like to work out, so I do CrossFit. I mean, I think to stay young, to stay active, especially at this age, yeah, you sort of have to reinvent yourself. Plus,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
my friends tell me you'll never slow down. So if you said tomorrow you were running for president, no one would be surprised.
Nobody would blink.
No one would blink. They say, "Oh yeah, that's Tony. That's okay."
So
Uh,
I love your books have this theme of true crime sort of running through them. They're driving your stories. And true crime podcasts are very popular. Do you think readers who like those types of podcasts would really enjoy your book or should add that to their reading list?
Well, they should definitely add it to the reading list. But yeah, they would enjoy. I've been on several podcasts that specialize in organized crime,
Yeah.
and they're quite popular. Yours is obviously very popular, and Marianne was lucky. I was lucky that she recommended me to you. So yeah, if you, in addition to that, I think if you like human nature,
Yeah.
if you like knowing what motivates people, what drives them, then my books are for you. Because
Okay.
you're going to learn what motivates Gino, how he goes through his relationship with the sergeant, Michelle, and then he has
mhm.
another relationship with Renee. And so, as I said, human nature, I think, teaches us that you have to change and you have to react to different situations in order to survive. Life is hard. Life is
Right.
hard. I don't think anyone could argue that. So, I would highly recommend someone. And sometimes the mob stuff gets in the way of like people wanting to read the book for other reasons. But that's a great question, and I would say if you're a student of human nature, I think you would enjoy my books.
You know, we talking about true crime and the popularity,
Hmm.
of course, that the mob has kind of always held this grasp on people. And your stories, they feel very cinematic. Has there ever been any interest from producers or screenwriters to bring this story to screen?
No, I haven't heard from anybody. People keep telling me this should be a Netflix series,
Right.
but
Yeah.
Hollywood hasn't come knocking on my door yet. I understand from talking to people in that industry, it's difficult because they would have to take my book, turn it into a screenplay, find investors, and that's hard. So hopefully someday I would love to see it. Love to see it on the screen.
We'll just
Yeah.
throw that out there then for any of our producer friends
Yeah, please, please contact me.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
Um,
so many things could be done with this. Yeah.
I
right?
think so. Yeah, I think it could be a movie very easily. It could be one of those miniseries, 6 or 7
Hmm.
Yeah.
um, episodes.
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
Yeah. Let's do this.
Okay, yeah. All right.
So
And
you
start
just
filming
released.
tomorrow. Anybody out there that wants to play Gino? Yeah, I have to approve the casting.
Oh, you've got thoughts, huh?
I have thoughts.
I love that. So you just released Back in the Game. How would you say that your writing has changed from the first book, They Always Win, to the second book, Back in the Game?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. And I think so when I first started writing, I was used to writing police reports, who,
Yeah.
what, when, how, and where.
Yeah.
And so I had to get over that. And what I did was I have a friend, Stu Horowitz. He has a company called Book Architecture. And he's not a ghostwriter, but what I did was turn the draft over to him. and he would say, Tony, this character Aldo, he has a beginning, but we need to give him a middle and an end. So every character has to have that full cycle. So I think, if anything, because of his guidance with the first book and the second, I think my writing maybe is a little more sophisticated than it was in the first book.
Yeah.
But, writing is rewriting, so I'm always trying to improve.
Yeah, so you're saying that before your first book, you hadn't written anything much other than police reports and probably academia type things.
Right.
So is it something that you had always thought about trying, or something maybe you did as a child? Like, did you enjoy writing, or was it really just the story and it just had to be written down?
It was really the story. I can't say that I wrote and published articles. I mean, I wrote a law review article, and I thought I was going to die from research. But I'm already, as you probably know, I'm very goal-oriented. Mm-hmm. So when I got it into my head that I wanted to write this book about that period of my life, it was just hard work,
Yeah.
I think it was Einstein that said genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Well, that's what it was for me. It's writing and writing and writing.
How long did it take you to write your books?
About 2 years for both of them.
Yeah, for both of them. So each book took 2 years.
Yeah, and there's a space. The first book I wrote was published in 2011, but then I got that job as the Middletown police chief.
Yeah.
I didn't have the time to do it. And during that retirement period of 6 years is when I wrote the second one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you interested in writing more books?
Yes, I am going to write the third in this series, which will be the last book in this series.
Okay.
I've got about 30,000 words, very rough draft, done. And it's my understanding that a novel's you need about 800,000 to maybe 100,000 words. And so when I get to that point, that's when I would call Stuart.
Yeah.
And I say I have the first draft, and then I would send it to him, and then it's a whole process.
Right. Yeah. So that process actually must take a lot of back and forth between the two of you to get it just where you need it.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time doing Zoom calls, emails, drafts, back and forth. It's a pretty lengthy process, but in addition to that, he has copywriters that help, and he works with a company called 1066 Design for the book covers and things like that. So it's all-encompassing. I mean, it gets down to picking out the font for the book. What font do you want? What color?
When you get to that point, you're probably like, whatever.
Yeah, I said, you pick.
I don't care.
Yeah. Quite a process, but the joy of it is when it's done, obviously. Right. And just a quick story. One of the things, I was talking to an author who said, releasing a book is like sending a child out into the world.
Yeah.
And that you get things back from that child. So I was I was at a bookstore talking about my book. And after the question and answer period, I was packing up, and a young man came up to me and he said, I just want to thank you. And I said, okay. He said, my father grew up in Federal Hill, and he was very, very ill. And he said, I went over to his house every night and read him a chapter of your book. And because he grew up on the hill, Federal Hill, I mean, I almost started crying, It made all that hard work, getting the book done and published, it made it all worthwhile. It really did, really did.
Oh, that's a beautiful story.
It's true, yeah, it's true.
I love that. And it's an area he could connect with because he knew that area and he knew the stories. That's one of the things I was messaging with Sarah the other day. I'm like, this is like woven into your life. She's like, this family, and I'm just like, we just don't have the gangster lore and where I am. When they came here, it was a safe city and a party. They ran, it was booze, and for their safe, St. Paul was a safe haven for gangsters. So they came for essentially vacation time. And ran all the, speakeasies in the Wabasha area, but they
Yeah.
literally came for downtime, and we had back then that was a very corrupt. St. Paul Police Department was very in. Because literally they just hosted them for vacation, so it's not the same. It's just
No, I know, but police corruption is the same, and it was the
Yeah.
same thing here because wages were terrible for working conditions were terrible for police officers, and we talked about men of respect getting new jobs. Well, who got the police officers and firemen their jobs? Sometimes it
Right.
was a mobster, you know.
Right.
Uh,
I mean, haven't you ever heard of our mayor, Julie?
May he
Oh,
rest in
no?
peace.
who? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh,
We're
is it-
pretty known for being corrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a-
no, nothing. Nobody's
I-
talking about it here.
I was on a segment of Crime Town, the podcast,
Yes.
and it talks all about the former mayor and corruption.
Nancy, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have to remember that the mafia, when it came to this country, it sort of evolved when immigrants were in their own special neighborhoods, and for the most part, that took place in the Northeast. So where Italians gathered, they have their social clubs, and from there, it took off from there. But it was something
Yeah.
actually in southern Italy that started out as a good thing, men of respect, and then it
Right.
got morphed into something worse.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. I mean, when I listened to the Crime Town that season, I actually listened twice, like a few years after I originally listened to it.
Okay.
But I'm like, oh gosh, you just forget that that's what you just grew up hearing these names and like
Yeah.
hearing the stories and yeah, it's kind of insane.
Yeah, and one of the things that people enjoy about my books is they'll read it and say, "Oh, I know who he's talking about. I know who this is. I remember that hit. I remember that crime."
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah, you can figure out some of the names.
Exactly. Yeah.
How did you? All right, so you did that, and everybody knows. If you know when you're reading your book, like what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had any negativity come from that?
No, not at all. Not at
Yeah,
all.
that's
You know
right.
why? So investigating organized crime, Italian American organized crime, because with the new groups, it's totally different.
Right.
There was sort of a respect between both sides,
Mm-hmm.
and that if you arrested someone and you did it fair and square, so to speak, then we were a cost of doing business for them.
Right.
So I never worried about it because a lot of them face to face. I mean, there were people who were in the witness protection program. They walk around now and they don't fear the mob.
Right.
But I remember that scene from The Godfather where I think it was Clemenza used to send his wife out to start his car because there was a bomb on it. So when I was investigated, when Bobo Marapisi was in jail, they let him out on work release or something like that. And my mother called me and she said, "Oh, Tony, I'm really afraid for you." I said, "Why, Mom?" She said, "Bobo's out. Maybe he's going to come after you." I said, "Don't worry about it, Mom. I have Mary start my car every morning." But here's the kicker. She said, "That's good." That's nice, she said.
Mary start my car every. Oh. So did you ever have moments in your career where you feared for your life because of your involvement, though?
No, not really. I mean, this is a line of work. If you go into it, you have to accept that,
Right.
But are you scared? Yeah, like 10 minutes after it's all over. Like
Right.
after I was in narcotics for a while, so we would bust in the door, and then you'd find the drugs or not. But you would be scared afterward. You would say to yourself, "Wow, what did I just do?" But the adrenaline gets kicked in, your training gets kicked in, and you survive it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, sometimes the stresses of police work get to police officers. And so we see a lot of divorce now. We see a lot of suicide, unfortunately, because it does take an emotional toll on you, and you have to handle it because this is a macho profession, right? So when I was growing up, when I started on the state police, you never talked about your feelings or anything like that. It was, suck it up, and get out there. So, yeah,
Right.
things have changed a lot. But I never really really never had much fear.
Okay. So
Yeah.
not for your kids or anything?
No, like I said,
Huh.
I knew that if I played by the rules, and I always did, I never
Right.
worried about it. And then you just prepare in case someone just, in this world, who knows? But
Right.
back then,
Right. It feels like a much scarier time now.
oh,
Yeah.
it's 100 times more
Huh.
scarier, I think, yeah. So you have some of these gangs, I think in Massachusetts, they shot a prosecutor and killed him.
Yeah.
I mean, that would never happen. So I'm talking about the 70s and 80s and 90s. Um, in Rhode Island during that time, there were like three centers of power. It was the organized crime, it was the Catholic Church,
Catholic Church.
and it was the state government. And they had a tremendous impact on our lives, all of our lives, anybody in Rhode Island. So, sometimes the organized crime would prevail, sometimes government would prevail, and sometimes the Catholic Church because Rhode Island is predominantly Roman Catholic, they had a great deal of influence on the state government.
Right.
And they
Right,
also
yeah.
did, they would do funerals for mobsters. And no, they would. They would have elaborate
Yeah.
funerals with, in the Catholic Church after living a life of crime.
After I was reading your first book, and there is a funeral that Gino goes to and gets quite a bit of backlash for,
Yep.
but you can really see that, like, I don't want to say balance, but like Gino was very torn. Like, I
Yeah.
shouldn't because of my role in the state police, but
Yeah.
I should because of my
I mean,
neighborhood and my family and my upbringing.
And,
Like,
and his mother telling him he has to.
it is mother saying,
Yeah.
yeah,
And there's a relationship between Italian young men and their mothers that's very close. And
Right.
so, yeah, she insisted that he take her to that wake. And of course, he takes her to the wake, and the state police are doing a surveillance, so he gets called into the office. But yeah, it's like having, a foot in two worlds.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, one foot in one world, one in the other.
yeah.
This is like screaming. It needs to be on our screens. This is the drama you want to see.
Well, let's write the screenplay, I guess, because someone else is doing it. No,
I think
probably your millions of viewers. Hopefully, somebody will see this and contact me or contact you.
that would be
Yeah.
that would be so cool.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
So I'm interested too, so we talked a little bit about this, but you didn't choose to write under a pen name, even though you're writing about your books are inspired by true crime and
Right.
what you dealt with. Was it because of that kind of respect between
Yeah,
the
and
law enforcement and
yeah, I never thought of using a pen name.
yeah,
Okay.
Everybody I worked with who had read the book, even if it was under the pen name, would know it was me. It wasn't too hard to figure out. So no, I never really considered it.
hmm
I was very comfortable in putting my name. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, I investigated them the way I was taught, which was the right way. If someone has a problem with that, they can come see me. We can talk about it. I don't have a problem with that. But most of them are gone. Most of them have passed away, or I call them lollipop gangsters now. They're not. It's not the same. It's not the same.
it's different.
They're in the Lollipop Guild now.
They're in the lollipop guild. Yeah, we'd like to welcome you to Munchkin Land.
Yeah, that's spectacular. And we can all picture that. They
Yeah.
were like little gangsters, anyways. That Lollipop Guild was a little
I was looking
terrifying.
to see if I had a Wizard of Oz.
Oh,
Yeah.
But I
She's
don't.
got all the Judy Garland stuff back there.
oh God, yeah. What a voice. What a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fun-
My grandfather used to collect, he knew I loved Judy Garland, so he would collect like songbooks and
Oh,
such
wow.
when he was out and about.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Yeah.
had to hang them in my podcast area.
Of course. Yeah. Sounds good.
Um,
Um,
So, what about somebody like me who just doesn't know much about Rhode Island gangsters, which is apparently common knowledge out there? What do you think would surprise people, readers who are in other parts of the country who just don't know the lore and the background when they're reading your books? What would be a big surprise for them?
I think what would be a big surprise for them was how much control organized crime had over a whole section of a city. So think of St. Paul. There was a section of St. Paul that was totally under the command, so to speak, of organized crime. So in an illustration of that is when organized crime and the patriarchal crime family was strong in that neighborhood, when he passed away, the neighborhood changed. It changed a lot. So my aunt still lived in that neighborhood. She was on Atwell Avenue waiting for a bus, and someone came up behind her and snatched her pocketbook, and she fell to the ground and broke her shoulder. So she recovered. Of course, she was in her 80s at the time, so I went to see her at the hospital, and I said, Auntie, because that's what you call your aunt when you're Italian, Auntie,
Yes.
I am so sorry that you got hurt. She said, Anthony, you're a state trooper and I love you, but if Raymond was alive, this would have never happened. And I hear people come up to me, like if I'm talking about organized crime, they'll tell me how one woman came up and said she was walking down Atwells Avenue about 10 o'clock, Cadillac pulls up, and window goes down, and it's the boss, Raymond Patriarca Sr., and he says to her, young lady, what are you doing out by yourself at this hour? She explains she was at her friend's house. He puts her in the car and takes her home, makes sure she's safe. So that's like a positive influence of organized crime in the neighborhood. But I think, I don't know if someone from, Iowa would understand that, how controlling was. So I think that would be new to them. I think talking about the witness protection program, how people testify against the state, for the state, I think that would be new for them. And I think, this is probably not much different, but relationships within a working organization, superior having an affair with a co-worker and things like that. But like I said, it's all human nature, so I think anyone would identify with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to explain, Julie, but people to this day still talk about how much better this city was.
Mm-hmm.
Back then in the 90s,
Yeah.
in the 80s. I mean, we had a big revitalization kind of our city, and it's quite beautiful now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a funny dynamic to kind of, you kind of understand it when you're a kid, and but you really don't. And then when you grow up, and you're like, oh my goodness, I had no idea this was happening. It's kind of an interesting place to live. Okay, so I want to know, what is the most Rhode Island thing about your books that only a local will catch?
Oh. So I think the most Rhode Island thing in the book is the purchasing of hot dogs, or otherwise known as wieners,
Yeah.
at the wiener stand in Olneyville Square.
Yeah.
Yep. So I did that. And then when I was a kid, I don't know how many people would remember this, but when I was a kid, there was a park on the Johnston line called Nunnaconnet Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this rumor going around that there was a mummy up there walking around. And everybody in school was terrified because some mummy was up in Nunnaconnet Hill. So that's something maybe only people from that area would remember, but that's another Rhode Island thing. And then there's the language, there's language in some of the mobsters. I would listen to them on wiretaps, and sometimes I would just laugh. So I'm listening to this one, he's talking to his friend, and his friend says, how's your son? He said, oh, he's a southpaw in high school. And the guy said, really? He goes, yeah, he's growing like a tree stump. I mean, you can't make that up. You really can't. So, yeah, I think Rhode Island there's a lot of things that they would recognize. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I talk about the arcade in Providence.
Yeah.
That's in the second book. So it was interesting for me because I grew up when the arcade was there, but I never knew the history of it. And that's one of the fun things about writing. When I start to write about the arcade, I go, well, I have to tell the story. I got to do more than just say they're in the arcade. So besides describing it, I looked at the history of it. In the second book.
Tell Julie what the arcade.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The arcade has been around since like the 1700s, I believe, and it looks like a Greek temple. And you walk it goes from one block to the end of another block. So you walk in from one street, and it's got stores and restaurants, and it's got like 3 levels. And it was a hopping place. Kids from RISD and Brown would go there to eat and shop, and it was just something really extraordinary. And as you said, when the city was revitalized, one of the things was the arcade sort of came back alive. Yeah.
Sounds like a mall.
It is. It's like a Greek mall. I mean, it's got columns and everything. It's just a really neat piece of architecture.
Huh.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of fun. I mean, the 80s, we were hanging out in the malls all the time. So, yeah, I could totally see that. So you lived your life in police work and a whole variety of things, including teaching. And then you've transitioned into an author. What are some things maybe that were very difficult about each of those things, and what's brought you joy from your police work and teaching and then from being an author?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think the most joy I get when I was in law enforcement was helping people.
Yeah.
Another joy that I got when I joined the Middletown Police Department, we were in an old building which was really unsafe, and we campaigned for a bond issue to get a new building, which we did. And then another joy I got was that we got nationally accredited and state accreditation for our policing. In other words, the procedures that we used are nationally known and accepted.
Yeah.
But really the joy of it is the people you work with. That's the joy. When it's all over, every career is like a roller coaster ride. There are ups and downs. But at the end of it, when you're with your friends, I mean, you only remember the good stuff and you talk about it. And that's another joy, is getting together with those people that I went through a common experience with, like the academy. Teaching was a joy. I love the students, and they love the fact that I had a career in law enforcement.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I talked about an arrest, I've made arrests, so I know that they enjoy that. And another joy is, just a quick example, I had a student, I was his advisor. He wanted to get into law enforcement. So a couple of years ago, I was at the police parade on Aquidneck Island. It was May of 2 years ago. And this Connecticut state trooper comes up to me. He's all squared away with his dress uniform. And he says, "Dean, it's me." And it was Todd Bowles, who was that student that came into my office. And then, that's the joy. And then another joy, just a quick example. So I was dean, and this kid came in to see me, and he said, I'm an engineering student, but I don't really think I want to do that. I might want to try law enforcement. I said, I'll tell you what, just take one, Introduction to Criminal Justice class, and see if it fits. And he did. He took it, switched his major, joined the state police, and he was a dog handler. And I don't know if you remember the movie they had about his dog.
Yep. Yes.
He was my student.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's our little connection.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Barbara.
Yep.
Barbara Liard?
Liard.
Lear. Yes.
Yeah.
So we're friends
Well,
from this Hallmark world.
yeah. Okay.
And I know she worked, or you hired her, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. She was the colonel's administrative assistant, so I think he
Yes.
kind of hired her. But yeah, I did interview her. She's a
Okay.
wonderful, wonderful person.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We even have more ties with my family with her family, which is interesting. But
Okay.
anyway, that I forgot, but she was very excited when that movie came out because she remembered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A great kid. Great kid.
I can't think of the name of the movie though.
I can't
Rudy,
either.
Rudy? No.
It was the dog's name, I think.
Rudy
Rudy,
maybe or
yeah, that's what it
something.
was,
Yeah, Rudy.
Rudy.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's crazy. Sometimes people will come up to me and say, "Oh, I remember you said to me do this or that," and I don't know who it is, and I don't know what I said. It had an impact on their lives, and I just
Yeah.
smile and nod, and
Yeah.
it's you don't realize when you're in these positions, even what you do, you don't realize what an effect it might have on someone. Mostly
Right.
positive, obviously, but you do. You don't realize it when you're going through it.
Right.
Right.
But
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, give our listeners a little teaser of what they might enjoy reading your books, and a little bit of the connection to
Okay.
the real mob.
I think they'll enjoy the relationship between Gino and Michelle. I think they won't be happy when Gino has a relationship with Renee, a former prosecutor. So I think they'll enjoy that, that love story, really. And
Yeah.
and now in the second book, um, Gino rescues Michelle, so to speak, and so I think people will enjoy that. And I just think, if you're interested, because most people go through their lives and they work their jobs Monday through Friday, and their entertainment is television, movies, and books. But for someone who's thirsty for that sort of thing, an escape, this book
Right.
provides you with that. It puts you in a whole different world, a world that only if you lived in it could you understand it. But it doesn't mean you won't understand it once you read about it. It's just like anything else we don't know about. You just do a little research, and yeah, it's really a journey. It's been a journey for me, and it's a journey for the characters. And every night I think, okay, what is Aldo gonna do? What's Gino gonna do now? Now I gotta get Aldo in. This is a little foreshadowing, but I want Gino and Michelle to end up at the end of the third book.
Yeah.
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 I mean, it's a love story, so it has to have a happy ending.
Right.
A Hollywood and for you and I.
Gino needs a happy ending. Yes.
I love how you said it puts you in a different world. And as somebody who doesn't know that world, I absolutely love being put into a different world.
Mhm.
And I love how there's history woven into this. I love historical facts or time period appropriate things. And so there's this wonderful mix of those things in what you write. And I think a lot of people love reading that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really into historical fiction. I just started
Yeah.
reading a lot of that. I really, really enjoy that. So yeah, this kind of is a little bit of that.
Right. It is.
It absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so would you play a little game with us?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Do you have a favorite movie?
Yes. Glory.
Let's hear it.
Glory.
What is it?
Glory.
Oh,
Glory. Oh yeah, great.
Oh, God, that scene where one of the soldiers runs off and to get a pair of shoes, the Denzel Washington, right?
Yep.
yeah.
And then the speech that the sergeant, that scene between the two of them,
Yep.
how they're out there dying for you and me, and now it's going to be our turn. But that whole movie, I love it. I love it.
Great. It's, there's a reason these are celebrated movies too. Like, and when you hear them, it's because they just really are great.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite book that's not one of yours?
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think what my favorite book would be.
You can give a few answers too. Like this is
Oh,
not a
Or what you're reading now,
yeah.
whatever.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
reading something called The Waitress.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes place in London. That's one of my favorite books. I have one of my favorite books was written by Stephen, the mystery writer,
Stephen King.
Okay.
Stephen King. It's called On Writing. Like before
Okay.
I started writing, I was looking for suggestions, and I was reading
Yeah.
books. But his book about writing is just fantastic. It's
Okay.
fantastic. So I would say that was my favorite. Jeff Shahar is one of my favorite authors. I think I've read all of his books. That's historical fiction. But I love the fact that like he'll take the Civil War and he'll give you General Grant's perspective, a soldier's perspective, a spy. I mean, I love all of his books.
Yeah. Those sound good. Okay, what about a favorite TV series or maybe something you're binging currently?
Well, right now I'm binging 911,
Okay.
Yeah.
which is the seventh series. But I think, well, I'm trying to think what other series that I like the movie. What was the movie that we just saw? I'm drawing a blank here. Oh, it was a very short series. It was like 7 episodes, and it was oh, I can't think of the name. Something Island.
Love Island? Is it?
Uh,
I don't know. I've
Yeah.
heard of Love Island, but I don't know what
Right.
that is.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just drawing a blank.
Some
That's okay.
Island, though. Okay.
Uh,
Well, if you think of it, you let us know.
Yeah.
yeah. God.
When you're not, when you haven't been involved in police work, investigating, prosecuting, or being an author, do you have a hobby?
Well, I like to exercise. It's really my escape. It's a way for me to get the pressure of the day, whatever it is, out. And I've always done it, and so that's really my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
And then I like spending time, obviously, with my wife, my daughters. They're in their 40s, and I'm like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
I brought these kids home from the hospital. How could they be in their 40s? So I enjoy that. And also enjoy, we take care of a young girl, she's like 2 or 3 years old, every Thursday night for her mother and father, so they could have a night. And that for us is like having our daughters back again. So we get great joy out of that. And she's funny, and we just have a great time with her. We spoil her, and then we give her back,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
grandparent.
Yeah.
It's like bonus grandparents.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that.
Yeah. I'm getting a small taste of that
Oh,
because
okay.
my niece has a baby. So like today she came over to teach my daughter how to tap dance. So I got to hold her baby
Oh.
and like pretend she was mine
Yeah.
for a few hours. And then I was like, here you go.
True Detective. That was a series I was
True
thinking.
Detective.
Yeah,
Okay.
the first season. So it had
That feels right up your alley.
Matthew McConaughey. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that was so well acted. He's a great actor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
He is.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
True Detective.
True
Okay,
Detective.
we'll look
Yeah.
it up.
There's 3
Okay.
seasons of it.
All right. Do you have a favorite thing about Rhode Island?
I think the beaches. Yeah, we're very lucky. Down here in Middletown, we have Second Beach and Third Beach. There's Easton's Beach, which is in Newport.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I remember, back in the day, as they said, when I was young, the Pesare family would every Sunday drive to the beach, and it was a private beach back then. It's Scarborough Beach now, but it was called Olivo's. And every Sunday we would go there, and we would have macaroni for lunch. Then we'd go down to the beach, swim all day, and come back and have hot dogs and hamburgers every Sunday in the same spot. So
Yeah.
that's something about Rhode Island in my personal life that I'll always remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
you.
Something special about that.
I
For
love-
me, growing up, it was Salty Bryan Beach because my grandmother had a
That's right.
T-shirt shop. So
Oh,
I would
really?
go
Okay.
help her with the T-shirt shop and walk across to the beach. So that was always
My daughter,
my
okay, here we go, only in Rhode Island. My daughter, my oldest daughter, was a clerk at the beach taking, people's money as they come in.
Yep. Yep.
And one time she was in the booth and someone called her and she stepped out of the booth and somebody drove right into the booth and knocked it over.
Oh goodness.
No way.
Yeah.
Way, I'm telling you. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
That's crazy.
yeah,
Yes.
I know.
Well, she was being watched after.
Right?
Yes.
Good law. I was looking down on her that day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dang, that's insane. Do you have some favorite music? Maybe a song, a band, a singer?
Well, I like country music.
Uh-huh.
I like Zach Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Zach Brown a lot. I like Garth Brooks. I like him a lot. And yeah, I think. And I also like Hootie from Hootie and the Blowfish.
Yeah.
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 So he's got a country career now.
Darius Rucker.
Yeah.
Darius Rucker, yeah. And
Yeah.
I like oldies, obviously, from the 60s and 70s. So I can feel young again for a little while, for 3 minutes or whatever.
Showing off her collection.
I mean, this is the backside of the Eagles album.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Yeah.
the shot they're flipped over right now. I have them the other. That's Prince, because
Oh, he's
So-
Prince, yeah.
yeah, because
Oh my
Minnesota.
God.
Sitting back there. Do you have a Zach Brown song that you really like?
I got my toes in the sand. I don't know the name of it, but he's down in. So he's down in the Caribbean somewhere. And I
Yeah.
got my toes in the sand, and
Yeah.
I can hear it in my
yeah,
head.
my,
Me
my,
too.
my bartender's been kissed by the. Her skin's been kissed by the sun. Yeah, I don't remember the name of it, but yeah, he's got
We
a.
know what you mean.
Yeah, no, I can hear it like right now. I'm just like,
Yep. It's a like a summer staple song
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
You've got to listen to it.
Yeah.
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 And we finally have summer weather, so
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, been very.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure, really. Anytime. I would love to come on again if you want to talk about anything.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll have to do another one more about like the actual crime and
Oh, yeah, we could do that.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
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 That'll be fun. If you so everybody should go out and find your books. They always win and Back in the Game. Where can they buy them?
So you can buy them on Amazon. You can buy them through barnesandnoble.com, Indigo. You can also go to my website. I have a website now, anthonympesare.com, and you can buy the books. You can learn about my speaking. I go out and speak to groups about law enforcement, about officer wellness, and about organized crime. So you can purchase them through that website.
Okay, perfect. We'll put a link to your website
Thank you.
in our show notes. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, thank you everybody for watching or listening, and we will catch you next time. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Goodbye.